here to weigh in, Jonathan Schanzer of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and Chris Wright, Chairman and CEO of Liberty Oilfield Services. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
Jonathan, I want to begin with
you.
you. What is the U.S. red line in all of this? Is that getting a nuclear bomb by Iran?
Well, that's one of the red lines, and the Trump administration has made that very clear. But also, the Trump administration has announced that if one American life is lost as a result of Iranian aggression, that this would also be a red line for the United States, and that would be a trigger for conflict. Right now, though, I think the Iranians are playing very closely to that line. They've obviously destroyed a very expensive piece of American military equipment, $123 million that drone is valued at. So that was not a benign strike. This was something that has clearly displeased our military and our president, and they're weighing their options. Yeah,
and how do we respond is the question. Chris, let me bring you in. The oil market certainly responding. Biggest gain of the year today for West Texas crude. However, we have much of our oil right here in the U.S. We're energy independent. So I guess I'm asking you to explain why oil prices rose so much today when we don't necessarily need Middle East oil.
Yeah, good point, Lauren. But, you know, of course, still a large part of the world's oil, not the United States' oil, but the world's oil comes out of the Persian Gulf region. But what I think is dramatic about this whole thing, what this episode illustrates, is the game-changing impact of the American shale revolution. It's unimaginable in the last 40 years since the Iranian Revolution that we would have a U.S. policy to stop the export of Iranian oil. Yeah. Today, that's possible. And we get a 5% bump with a flashpoint in the Middle East. So, yes, there's a little geopolitical risk there in the price of oil, but relatively modest.
Yeah, we were just showing all the countries and their world oil contribution. Iran isn't even on the list. It's just 2%. But that brings us, Chris, follow-up for you, to natural gas prices down sharply today. Is that because with fracking here in the U.S. really very much less dependent on foreign oil?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, U.S. natural gas production is nearly doubled. U.S. oil production's more than doubled. I think natural gas prices are in today from Storage Report today. And just the extremely high production of U.S. natural gas.
Jonathan, I want to play you a soundbite from the president. And I want to ask you on the other side of this, if you think this is a savvy foreign policy move by the president trying to downplay the tensions. Take a listen.
I have a feeling, I may be wrong, and I may be right, but I'm right a lot. I have a feeling that it was a mistake made by somebody that shouldn't have been doing what they did. I don't know. I find it hard to believe it was intentional, if you want to know the truth. I think that it could have been somebody who was loose and stupid that did it.
Jonathan, the possibility of this being a mistake?
Look, it's hard to believe that it was a mistake. I think it's interesting, though, to note that the president is taking his time. I think he's trying to be deliberate, not rushing to conflict with Iran, contrary to what I think a lot of people have said about him or about John Bolton or about Mike Pompeo. This is not an administration that's rushing to war. But remember here that the Iranians have been responsible for mayhem across the Middle East, whether it's sponsoring terrorist groups like Hezbollah and Hamas or attacking American troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. That's more than 600 Americans killed by Iranians over the last decade or two. The Iranians are very deliberate in their use of violence. So we have to remember that. I don't think we should be giving them a free pass, but I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a beat and being very deliberate about how we respond to Iran next.
What is the appropriate U.S. response, Jonathan, to Iran's provocation? Even if it was a mistake, the appropriate response.
There's a lot of room between complete inaction and a full-scale invasion like what we did in Iraq in 2003. We could be looking at covert actions. We could be striking Iranian assets in places like Syria where they have deniability.
What about their oil fields, Jonathan, taking them out?
I think that's probably a mistake, and that's a serious escalation. But again, there are ways of doing this with some deniability, covert action probably being the most obvious, where we can privately claim credit but not publicly rub their noses in it, but let them know in in no uncertain terms that we're not going to allow for further escalation. This has to be the way that the administration probably is looking at it at this moment.
Jonathan Schanzer, Chris Wright, thank you very much.
Thank you.